At my sister Lila's wedding, I handed her the deed to a fully paid $420,000 condo. She lifted it like a napkin, skimmed the address, and burst into a laugh so sharp it sliced through the music. Not the location I wanted. I'm not living in that cheap part of town. Nearly 200 guests turned, waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't. Something inside me clicked into place, cold, clean, unmistakable. I smiled at her, and in that moment I realized she had no idea what she had just started. And neither did the rest of them. My name is Emily. I'm 38, a lawyer who negotiates massive deals for a living, the kind where a single misplaced comma can unravel an entire transaction. People hear that and picture sharp suits, panoramic views, a life of precision and control. And yes, that's part of it. But what they don't see is the exhaustion those 100-hour weeks, the cold coffee forgotten on my desk, the quiet walk home through a city that never really feels like mine. Still, I've always carried myself like someone who could take the hit. I was raised that way. Growing up, my mother Marion had a habit of labeling us as if she were casting a play she never planned to rewrite. Emily is the strong one, she'd say at Thanksgiving or over birthday cake, her tone soft but final. Then she'd turn to my sister Lila and add, and Lila is the creative one. Everyone would laugh, nodding at the simplicity of it. But those labels weren't harmless. They were assignments. Strong one meant dependable. Dependable meant responsible. Responsible meant I covered the gaps, the bills, the crises, the emotional cleanup. Creative one meant exempt from consequences. Special. Fragile. Entitled to softness. For years, I pretended not to notice the imbalance. Whenever Lila fell behind on rent, $3,500 a month in the trendy downtown building, she insisted, matched her brand, I paid it. When she claimed she couldn't build a lifestyle page while driving a beat-up sedan, I co-signed for the sleek electric car she wanted. When she needed retreats, coaching sessions, photography packages, costing tens of thousands total, I transferred the money before she even asked twice. I told myself it was temporary, that she just needed a start, that someday she would stand on her own. But the truth was simpler. I had been conditioned to believe my worth came from giving, that being the strong one meant never putting the weight down. My father stayed mostly quiet in those years. He loved us, I think, but conflict made him retreat into the background like a piece of furniture everyone forgets to dust. If Marion said Lila needed something, he didn't question where the money came from. He just assumed I could handle it. Meanwhile, Lila lived in a world of soft lighting and curated mornings. Oat milk lattes, authenticity posts, sponsorship dreams, pastel journals filled with mantras. She called herself an influencer. What she never called herself was responsible. I should have seen what was building. The way my mother's eyes tightened when I hesitated before agreeing to another payment. The way Lila spoke about my money as if it were an extension of her own plans. The way everyone praised me for being dependable even as I quietly unraveled under the weight. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't know the breaking point would come so publicly, and that it would begin with a single, brutal laugh. Weddings are supposed to feel warm glasses, clinking flowers, wilting in soft evening light, people drifting from table to table with easy smiles. Lila's wedding felt like a production set. Everything was staged for her camera, floating candles, a floral arch taller than the groom guests arranged by aesthetic instead of relation. Even the music seemed curated for her feed. I walked toward her with the folio holding the deed, telling myself this was the moment things finally balanced out, a fresh start, a gesture big enough to prove I wasn't just the strong one, I was her sister. She stood near the head table, radiant in lace phone, angled in her hand as she checked her reflection between poses. When she saw me, her smile stretched wide for the photos until she noticed the folder. "Oh my God, Em, is this a speech?" "Tell me it's short," she whispered, half laughing. "It's a gift," I said. "Something important." The DJ lowered the music like it was part of the program. Guests shifted. Someone clapped, assuming a sweet moment was about to unfold. I placed the deed in her hands. At first she didn't understand what she was holding. Then she saw the address, the numbers, the words fully paid. Her eyes widened, not with gratitude, but calculation. And then she laughed. It wasn't the soft, embarrassed kind of laugh someone makes when they're overwhelmed. It was sharp performed, designed to travel. Heads turned instantly toward us. The groom froze mid-step. "Not the location I wanted," she said, her voice lifting through the microphone clipped to her dress. "I'm not living in that cheap part of town." A ripple of awkward chuckles moved through the crowd. Some people laughed because they thought it was a joke. Others laughed because they didn't know what else to do. A few didn't laugh at all. They just stared at me, waiting for the emotional collapse that should have followed. My throat tightened. My vision tunneled. For a second, I couldn't feel the floor under my heels. But I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even flinch. Marion appeared beside her, like she'd rehearsed the scene. "Oh, honey," she cooed to Lila, brushing a curl from her shoulder. "Emily means well. She's just practical." Practical. That word landed harder than the laugh. Lila shrugged, still smiling for the cameras. "It's fine. She probably didn't think about my brand. It's not her world." My mother nodded sympathetically, as if I weren't standing 3 feet away. In that moment, the weight of every year, every payment, every rescue, every time I swallowed frustration to protect peace pressed into my ribs. And then something inside me shifted. A clean break. A quiet rupture. I looked at my sister, my mother, the sea of eyes waiting for me to fold. Instead, I smiled. Not the smile they expected, the one that meant I finally understood exactly what I was dealing with, and exactly what I was going to do next. I slipped away from the head table as the music swelled again, pretending to admire the flower arrangements while I tried to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. It felt more like the slow, bright burn of clarity spreading through my chest. I made it halfway toward the exit before I heard heels clicking rapidly behind me. Emily Lila hissed. I turned. She stood beside a wall of champagne flutes, veil slightly crooked, eyes blazing. "What was that?" she demanded. "Were you trying to embarrass me?" "It was a gift," I said, keeping my voice level. "A gift," she gave a choked laugh. "To that neighborhood? Did you even look at the lighting in those units? It would destroy my content, and you gave it to me in front of everyone. You know my brand. Why would you sabotage me like that?" Her words hit me like cold water. Sabotage. That's what she thought this was. Before I could answer, Marion swept in, Pearl's gleaming voice dripping with practiced sweetness. "Girls," she murmured, "please, not tonight." Then, turning to me, she added in a quieter tone, "Emily, darling, you know how sensitive your sister is. She means well." Sensitive. Another old label, another subtle reminder that my feelings were optional, while hers were sacred. "I'm going home," I said. Marion's hand clamped onto my arm, gentle in appearance, sharp underneath. "You will not leave," she whispered, smiling for anyone who might glance our way. "Don't be selfish just because you're hurt." There it was, the line, sharp enough to sever decades of conditioning in an instant. Selfish, because I was hurt. Not because I'd been humiliated, not because my sister had mocked a life-changing gift, not because I'd financed Lila's life for years without acknowledgement. No, because I dared to feel something about it. I pulled my arm back, slowly, deliberately. "I'm leaving," I repeated, "and I'm done." I didn't wait for their reaction. I walked out through the grand glass doors, the night air cool against my face. My heels clicked across the pavement, each step louder, more certain. At the valet stand, I paused. One thought cut through the noise in my head, the car. The one I co-signed. The one she'd driven here like a badge of status. I raised my hand. The valet hurried over. "Bring out the electric SUV registered under my name," I said, "not hers." He blinked, confused, but nodded. For the first time all night, I felt the corners of my mouth lift. Not a polite smile, not a peacekeeping smile. A clean, sharp smile, the kind I used across boardroom tables when a deal finally made sense. When I got home, the apartment felt heavier than usual. I turned on one lamp, kicked off my heels, and walked into the kitchen. That's when I saw it, an envelope slid under my door, my name written in a familiar, shaky script. Inside were documents, printouts, plans, and a note that made my heart go still. Suddenly, the humiliation at the wedding wasn't the worst part, not even close. I spread the papers across my kitchen counter, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the apartment. The envelope had been left by Adam the groom, though his note was short, almost apologetic. He'd written that he'd found these in a shared folder on Lila's phone while she was getting ready earlier that day. He claimed he hadn't known the full picture. He didn't know where else to turn. I didn't know whether to believe him. But the documents spoke loudly enough on their own. Bullet points, estimates, deadlines, a neat list titled Future Support from Emily, projected payments for Lila's upcoming content evolution, a request for a more expensive car upgrade, a timeline for an eventual real house with a suggested down payment I was apparently expected to cover. Numbers were rounded, but they were enough. Someone had discussed them carefully. Someone had planned. And the handwriting in the margins, that looping, careful script, belonged unmistakably to Marian. I wasn't just the strong one. I'd been their business plan. I stood there for a long time, hands braced against the cold countertop chest, rising and falling like I'd run a marathon. The humiliation at the wedding had been a blow, but this was the knife. Premeditated, organized. A system I had been born into without consent. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't emotional. I was lucid, clear. Focused the way I was on the 50th floor when a billion-dollar deal needed closing. At 7 the next morning, I made coffee, strong, bitter grounding. I sat at my desk and began dismantling the financial structure I had been holding up for years. Step 1. I opened my banking app, found the recurring transfer for Lila's rent, $3,500 every first of the month, and canceled it. A small message popped up. Are you sure? Yes. For the first time, absolutely yes. Step 2. I contacted my insurance provider and removed Lila as a listed driver. Then I initiated the process to sell the electric SUV she claimed as part of her brand aesthetic. She had never made a payment, not one. Step 3, I changed every shared password and removed every linked account, streaming services, utilities, memberships she had quietly logged into over the years. Step 4, I forwarded the future support plan to my attorney with a request for a formal repayment agreement, a polite professional document outlining the totals of what Lila owed, a clean record of what I would no longer ignore. The moment I hit send, something loosened in my chest like the first deep breath after surfacing from underwater. Then the phone began vibrating, once, then again, then relentlessly. First Lila, then Marian, then relatives I hadn't heard from in months. You canceled my rent. How could you do this right before my honeymoon, Emily? Your mother is upset. Please call her. You're humiliating the family. Each message more frantic than the last, each one laced with entitlement. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent one message into the family group chat, a single photo of the future support plan, the one with Marian's neat handwriting and Lila's excited annotations. Then I put my phone face down. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. At noon, my office line rang. Not my cell, the office phone reserved for urgent deals or senior partners. I let it ring twice, then answered. "This is Emily. What have you done?" Marian's voice came through sharp and trembling. "Good morning," I said lightly. "Don't you take that tone with me," she snapped. "Your sister is devastated. Adam's family is asking questions. Do you understand the chaos you've caused?" "The chaos I caused," I repeated. "Interesting phrasing. You exposed private notes," she hissed. "You embarrassed us. I didn't create the notes, I said, and embarrassment only hurts when it's undeserved." There was a beat of silence. I could hear her breathing. "You don't walk away from family," she said finally, voice shifting, soft pleading. "You're the strong one. Lila has always needed more support. You know that." "Needed," I said, "or expected." "She's sensitive," Marian whispered. "You know that." "And you know I'm not," I replied, "which is exactly why you built the entire system around me." Her composure cracked. "You can't do this, Emily. We raised you." "No," I interrupted, calm and sharp. "You raised a resource. You raised someone who would never say no, and now I'm saying it." She inhaled sharply, like the ground had shifted beneath her. "If you walk away from this," she said, voice trembling, "you walk away from us." I considered her words. Once they would have gutted me. Now they held nothing but truth and freedom. "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm stepping out of a role I never agreed to." There was a muffled noise, maybe a gasp, maybe a sob. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "No," I said. "I already regret not doing it sooner." I ended the call without slamming the phone, just a quiet click, clean and final. By late afternoon, I drove to the hotel where Lila and Adam were staying before their honeymoon. She must have gotten word I was coming because she burst out the front doors, mascara, smudged hair, unpinned. "You can't take the car," she cried. "I need it." "My followers expect." I held out my hand. "The keys." She shook her head, tears falling. "You're cruel." "No," I said. "I'm done." Behind her, Adam stepped forward, guilt in his eyes. "I tried to tell her," he said softly. I nodded. "Take care of yourself, Adam." Lila dug through her purse with trembling hands, slapped the key fob into my palm, and stumbled back as if the act physically stunned her. People watched from the lobby. Some whispered. Some pretended not to look. I didn't care. I walked past all of them, keys dangling from my fingers, sunlight glinting off the metal. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like equilibrium, like the first honest step I'd taken in years. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I realized something else. This wasn't the end of the family I grew up with. It was the beginning of the one I chose for myself. A week later, the condo I'd gifted, then reclaimed, found new life. A colleague mentioned his daughter and her partner, both medical residents, exhausted from overnight shifts and desperate for a safe place near the hospital. I offered it to them at a lower rate than I could have asked. Their gratitude felt nothing like the demands I'd grown used to. It felt clean, human. The electric SUV sat quietly in my garage, stripped of its symbolism. I drove it on a Sunday morning, windows down, letting the air wash away the last traces of Lila's perfume. Back home, I stepped onto my balcony with a cup of coffee. For once, it was still hot. The city felt different, wider somehow, as if I had space to breathe again. I wasn't the strong one or the responsible one. I was just a woman who finally set something heavy down. And the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like mine. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. No is a complete sentence, and boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. Walking away from a role I never agreed to didn't break my family. It revealed the truth about it. If any part of this felt familiar, tell me your story in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. You're not alone in this.